Hello, and welcome to the U.S. Department of the Interior. My name is Tim Fullerton. I am the Director of New Media here, and we're happy to be joined today by Secretary Ken Salazar, who is going to be answering your questions on the America's Great Outdoors Initiative. We've already received a lot of great questions over email. We'll start with those. But if you have any questions that have not been asked yet, please go make sure that you enter them in the chat window below, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can over the next 30 minutes. So, Mr. Secretary, would you like to offer any opening comments before we get into the questions?
We're here at the Bison Bistro at the Department of the Interior, which is one of the most famous cafeterias built actually by Harold Dickey's, and with a lot of the Native American architecture behind us and the paintings from that era. But it's an honor to be with all of you today speaking about the America's Great Outdoors program and what it is that we're doing for conservation for America.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. And the first question we have is actually a question from Joseph on Facebook. And he wants to know, what is the greatest accomplishment in meeting President Obama's directive on conservation as part of the AGO campaign? And what is the greatest threat to conservation?
Our greatest achievement so far has been the passage of the Public Lands Bill of 2009. It was something the President and I worked on very hard. It established 2 million acres of wilderness around our country, 1,100 miles of wild and scenic rivers, 3 new national parks, national conservation units, and really is probably the most significant conservation measure passed in the United States over the last 30 years. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment, and we have moved forward with that accomplishment and built from it as we move forward with the America's Great Outdoors.
Great. The next question comes from Beverly in Michigan, and there's been a lot of interest in this topic over the last couple of days. What do you and the administration propose that we do to protect America's precious wilderness?
You know, Beverly, our wilderness in America really is something which is very important and something which we must protect. When we think about the heroes of conservation in our life, there are people like Teddy Roosevelt, who became the wilderness warrior, and people like Stuart Udall and John Kennedy in the 1960s, who moved forward with the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And so today we need to push as much as we can to make sure that we protect as much of our public lands and wilderness, and that we do other things, including connecting up wildlife corridors and private lands to our public lands and a whole host of other things. For right now, what we are doing with wilderness is first, we have the wilderness package that we were able to get through the Congress in 2009. Number 2, today I have asked the members of Congress to help identify the crown jewels of wilderness where they want to help us get these wilderness areas permanently protected. There are a number of members of Congress who've already introduced legislation, and includes both Democrats and Republicans. Beauty Mountain and Congressman Ice's district in California, the White Clouds area in Idaho, and Congressman Simpson's district, a number of places in New Mexico, and all over the West. So we hope to compile that inventory, and by October the 15th, be able to put the shoulder behind the wheel of the Congress to try to get some of these enacted into law, into permanent protection. And then thirdly, out of the 250 million acres of the Bureau of Land Management, there are lands out there which have wilderness characteristics, and those wilderness characteristics need to be, first of all, inventoried, which we are doing that right now through the BLM. And second of all, we need to make sure that we are protecting those wilderness characteristics as we move forward.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question comes from Marge, and it is there any funding for AGO projects in the current year's budget? The President's budget for fiscal year 2012 contains a funding request for AGO through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. How much of that funding will go to AGO projects?
Marge, what we are doing is putting a significant amount of funding into conservation in the President's budget for the first time in the history of the Obama administration, but for only the second time since the Land and Water Conservation Fund was created in the 1960s, we have proposed fully funding the Land and Water Conservation Fund at $900 million. If we are successful in getting that through the Congress, that will be one of the buckets of dollars that will be available to implement America's Great Outdoors program. We also have other buckets of funding, including the North American duck stamp funds, which we receive, and a whole host of other funding streams that we hope to integrate to make the vision of America's Great Outdoors a reality. America's Great Outdoors, if I may just take a minute to talk about it, really is a result of President Obama's initiative last year to host a White House conference on conservation. We held, from that conference, 51 listening sessions around the country, listened to 100,000 people. and came up with the priority areas for conservation for our time. And in our view, those priority areas are urban, parks, and wildlife areas, and we have many of those that we have identified around the country. The protection of significant rural landscapes in places like the Crown of the Continent in Montana, the headwaters areas of the Everglades, the Dakota grasslands, and a host of others. And thirdly, a river restoration agenda for the 21st century that will help us with the restoration of rivers from the San Joaquin in California to the Elbow River in Washington to the Rio Grande in Colorado and all around this country. So the America's Great Outdoors Initiative is about urban parks and wildlife areas. It's about rural landscapes, which are large and important to wildlife and recreation, hunting and angling. It's important for what we are trying to do with the new era of river restoration in America.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And for those of you who have just joined us, I just want to remind you, if you have a question for us, you can use the chat box underneath the video here. And we're getting some questions, but our volume is a little low. So if we could just, we'll try to talk a little louder for all of you so that you can hear us. We actually have a question now from the chat. This is from Christina, and she's asking what funding is available to connect young people to the outdoors.
We in the Interior have moved aggressively to try to get young people involved with us and engaged with us in the department. When I came in, President Obama's direction, we decided that we would hire as many young people as we possibly could here in the department. So last year in 2010, we were able to hire 21,643 people all across America who are working with us in our wildlife refuges, in our national parks, here at headquarters in Washington, D.C. We expect to continue to do more and more of that. We also are working with our partners, the Student Conservation Association and other organizations out there, to stand up a 21st century civilian conservation corps that we can be truly proud of. Our view under America's Great Outdoors is that without the young people of America being involved and being invested in what we are doing in conservation, we frankly will not succeed. Young people are a key to conservation, and so we'll continue to have a focus on youth involvement in everything that we do here at Interior.
Great. The next question is from Janea, and she says, my local, and local is in quotes, park is Shenandoah. As wonderful as it is apparent that there is a dearth of national parks on the East Coast where there is so much, that is such an underserved population. Is there something that we as park enthusiasts can do to encourage the establishment of large recreational parks such as Shenandoah and other places on the East Coast? And she suggests Pennsylvania or Maine as possible locations.
Janea, the answer to that is absolutely yes, we can, and absolutely yes, we will. And we need your help to try to get it done. We now have 394 national parks units. We have proposals out there for another additional 20 or 30 more. I can think of the state of Maine where for the longest time there has been a long discussion about establishing a national park in the north woods of Maine. We have a landowner who has 100,000 acres up there willing to donate that to the national parks to create a new national park up in Maine. We will be in Maine later this year, and hopefully some of you might be able to join us when we're there as we examine the way in which we can get the political support from the members of Congress and the Maine delegation to try to get that done. Same thing is true for Pennsylvania and West Virginia and a whole host of other places. So yes, we have an important agenda for the national parks, and it's probably a good time also just to remind everybody who's watching that the Department of Interior is really a department of America. It's about everywhere in America. It's not just about the West. And so our wildlife refuges, for example, we have more in Florida and in North Dakota than we do anywhere else in the country. Our national parks units, which include our Civil War battlefields, are found throughout the eastern coast. But it doesn't mean that we have yet done enough. We have candidates for national parks in West Virginia, in Pennsylvania, in Maine, and a whole host of other places. So we look forward to continuing the conversation and hopefully being able to get the support of Congress to get some of these things enacted into law.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The next question is about off-road vehicles. Carl says, the current policies have been to shut off areas and close down trails that we've used for years. He says, I agree that there should be some wilderness areas where nature can happen as it always has happened, but there are millions of acres dedicated to nature. My question to you is, can my friends and I count on you and the AGO initiative to increase and improve the areas available for us to ride our off-road vehicles on?
Carl, the answer is we are doing that, and we'll continue to do that. We have a healthy respect for off-road vehicles to be used in some of the great places in the United States. I was at the Imperial Sand Dunes in Southern California and joined families who have been using their off-road vehicles there in those great sand dunes now for 4 and 5 generations. So there are many places on our public domains, 20% of the land of the United States, where we do in fact allow off-road vehicle usage. But there's also then those areas where we believe are appropriate for wilderness, where we do not allow off-road vehicle uses there. And so I think it's finding the right places and the right uses, but it's not at all an intent of mine or the President's to keep people off of the public lands. We want the usage to be there. We want our public to enjoy the great outdoors, and there are many forms in which one can enjoy the great outdoors, including through the use of off-road vehicles.
Great. We have another question that's just come in through the chat, and this person wants to know, how do underutilized communities become engaged with the Department of the Interior?
You know, we have to do a lot more, especially in urban America and with minority groups that have not been as involved in the outdoors as we need them to be. You know, when Teddy Roosevelt became the great conservation president of the country, most of our population lived in the rural areas. Now most of our population lives in the urban areas. And that's why we're moving forward with the initiative on great urban parks and wildlife areas in places like New York City and Jamaica Bay, where we have 27,000 acres and are working now with Mayor Bloomberg to make that into one of the greatest urban parks and wildlife areas in America. We're doing the same thing at St. Louis with the Dred Scott Courthouse and the Arch at St. Louis and the Mississippi River. And we're doing the same thing in places like Denver with the Rocky Mountain Greenway. And so all across the country, our efforts are to try to provide opportunities that are close to home and have young people have those opportunities to recreate on these great lands. Now, it's also important that we create exposure to young people in all of these places. I was in the Santa Monica Mountains and met with young people from East LA who, for the first time, had gone out there a month or two before I got to the Santa Monica Mountains. They were impressed. They are some of the people that we now have hired on as junior rangers in the National Park Service. So we need to continue our outreach to young people, because I think once they're exposed to the great outdoors, whether it's bird watching, whether it's fishing, whether it's hunting, or whether it's off-road vehicle usage, I think it has a dramatic and positive impact on the lives of young people.
Great. And I'll just add, if you're looking to contact us directly, there is an email sign-up box in the upper right-hand corner of our website at doi.gov. You can enter your email address there, or if you want to send us in a question or learn about how you can become more engaged, you can email us at info@ios.doi.gov, and we'll make sure somebody gets back to you. So the next question is from Denton in North Carolina, and he says, I'm a 19-year-old North Carolinian, and I'm concerned about the potential effects of climate change on our nation. What steps is your department taking to reduce the impact of climate change, and what more do you think needs to be done?
Denton, I appreciate the question. I was just in North Carolina meeting with your governor a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday to talk about America's great outdoors and some of the ideas that they have in North Carolina, including they already have significant funding streams to help us on the conservation agenda. It's important that we do this in collaboration with the states and with local government. On your question on climate change, it is a huge issue for our country and for the environmental security of our globe. You know, I probably, as Secretary of the Interior, get to see this firsthand in a way that most people don't get to see it. I was at Glacier National Park 2 years ago with our scientists, and they tell us that the glaciers at Glacier National Park will disappear from our planet by the year 2020. That's not that far away. It's right around the corner. So I see it in Lake Superior in the Apostle Islands, where the temperature of Lake Superior has now warmed up 5 degrees warmer than it was 20 years ago. I see it in the decline of the water supply in the Colorado River and the 7 state regions of the Southwest and on the Rio Grande, where we're seeing the terrible fires in Arizona and the great droughts of that area. So climate change is real, and we need to move forward in a way that addresses the issue comprehensively, joining the other countries of the world in a climate change agenda that will bring us environmental security for the future, as well as address the issues relating to the energy concerns that we all have.
Great. Thank you. The next question is from Molly in Colorado, and she wants to know, what are you doing to ensure that the Colorado River keeps flowing for generations to come?
You know, Molly, the Colorado River is a great river. In some ways, it's a rosary of greatness, if you will, from the headwaters at Rocky Mountain National Park, right there next to Estes Park, all the way through Grand Junction, through Utah, through all the way to Mexico and the whole area that it serves. The water of the Colorado River supplies the water for about a third of all the produce that comes from our farms and our ranches, as well as the great recreational opportunities and conservation opportunities along the Colorado River. So we just need to manage the Colorado River in a way that's respectful of water rights in the West, which are such an important issue for the 7 states that share the Colorado, but also to continue to look for ways of improving the Colorado River system. And we've done that through one great program called the Upper Colorado River Recovery Program, which is building fish passages and improving habitat along the river. And it is a joint effort with environmentalists, with the conservation community and ranchers and municipal water users and others. So we will have a Colorado River that will continue to flow. And hopefully will be improved for the ages. We're not doing to our rivers what was sadly done to our rivers 100 years ago. We're taking much better care of our rivers today and understand that what we do to those rivers is important. Colorado River is probably going to see a 10 to 15% decline in the available water supply for the Colorado River. It's a river that people have fought over for 100 years, many cases up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And one of the things that is important for us is to also make sure that we are adapting to this impact of climate change. And so the Bureau of Reclamation and the people who work there in this department have been working very hard to develop an agenda for making sure that we're ready for those changes to come.
Great, thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I just I see a question here from Research One. It's more of a statement that he's saying it's clear that there's significant interest in these live chat sessions, and will they become a regular feature for Interior? And the answer will be yes, we will be doing these regularly. We have a lot of questions that we're not going to be able to get to today, and so we're hopefully we'll be doing these not only with Secretary Salazar, but also with some other officials at Interior. So we just want to thank you all for sending in these questions and continuing to do so. So the next question is from David in Denver, and he is asking, what actions would cities need to take and when to develop pilot land conservation management projects that help achieve restoration, habitat, and research goals?
You know, David, I think that what cities can do and what states can do is to help us identify these projects that are great projects that achieve restoration, environmental restoration, and connections for young people. Denver is a great example because of the leadership of Governor Hickenlooper there, as well as the city and county officials in the Denver metropolitan area. The Rocky Mountain Greenway project will connect up the 27 square miles of the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which is now a wildlife refuge which we control, to the South Platte River and Clear Creek and Cherry Creek and Chatfield, and Rocky Flats, which is a wildlife refuge of 6,000 acres. And eventually, our hope is that we have a trail system that connects up that entire system all the way to Rocky Mountain National Park, which is one of the great crown jewels of the American National Park system. And so those ideas really is illustrated by what's happened in the Denver metropolitan area, really are ideas that came out from local grassroots organizations that have been working on and trying to make these dreams a reality. We're in a position where we want to help make those dreams a reality.
Great, thank you. The next question is from Valerie, who identifies herself as a college student, and her question is, being from a big city far from wild spaces, I've noticed that the areas with wild areas around the cities aren't really connected. What is being done to connect these spaces?
You know, it's Valerie, right?
Yes.
Valerie, in the history of conservation, that's one of the things that has been missing, is that there has not been connectivity between our corridors, our wildlife corridors, our wildlife habitats, public lands, and private lands. And so that's one of the integral principles of the America's Great Outdoors Project. And so we're trying to do that around the country. We have great tools now that we didn't used to have 10 or 20 years ago with some of the geospatial planning and and scanning devices that we have that can tell us what we need to do to connect up these corridors. So hopefully we will see a lot more of that. I'll tell you just a quick story, if I may. I know our time is short, Tim, but I wanted to tell you the story. I was in Brazil not too long ago, and there was a group of conservation organizations who came to meet with me for about 2 hours. There was a man who had been working for 30 years to save the monkey in Brazil. And he tells a story that when he got to Rio and he started talking to people about saving the monkey, that people thought that he was crazy because the monkey was seen as this golden tamarin monkey scratched people and spit on people and didn't seem to like people, and so everybody wanted to get rid of the monkey, and he wanted to protect the monkey, and so he wasn't seen as a very popular person in Brazil when he went in there on that conservation initiative. Well, the years passed, and he was able to find some common ground because of the fact that the farmers and the cities in Rio and the surrounding areas recognized that in order for them to have a positive economic future, they needed to protect their rivers and they needed to protect the water in those rivers. For the monkeys needed to have the canopy uninterrupted along many miles of river. And now the monkey today is thriving and is happy, and it has been saved from extinction. And the farmers and the city of Rio is happy because they also have good water supply. So there are win-win solutions in the environment, and the protection of the environment does not have to be at odds with the good economic needs that we all have for jobs.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. The next question is about the national parks, and Eddie wants to know what do you envision the national parks will look like in 100 years?
Eddie, 100 years. That's a long time, Eddie, but let me take a stab at it. I think if we look at the national parks 100 years ago, they did not even exist because the national park system began here in this country in 1916. And so we will be celebrating the centennial anniversary of the national parks in the year 2016 and are doing a lot to try to celebrate them. Ken Burns and Dayton Duncan had a major documentary on PBS last year called America's National Parks, America's Best Idea. And they are America's best idea because they are, as Ken Burns would say, uniquely democratic, uniquely American, because they don't belong to just the noblemen and the rich people of the world and the country, but they belong to the common man, common person, common woman of America. And so we envision that the national park systems will continue to grow and will continue to expand in a lot of different ways. And I would say this, I think it's important that the national parks system expands to tell all of America's story, because not all of America's story has been told with respect to African Americans, slavery, or the history of women and the contributions that women have made to our country. And yet it's one of the key missions of our National Park Service. We need to make the mission relevant to all of America, not just a part of America. And secondly, as I think Virginia or someone asked in the chat earlier on, there are many places in the United States where additional national parks are needed. There are some in West Virginia, which the senators from West Virginia have been promoting. There are some in other places around the country. So we'll continue to build on what already is a great idea and a great success story. We are the envy of the world. When I was in Brazil again a few weeks ago, I was reminded that the national park system in Brazil gets 4 million visitors a year. 4 million visitors a year. We here in the United States are getting almost 400 million visitors a year. And so we have a great system that is the envy of the world, and it's a great system that can and will be improved upon.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We have another question from Mike, and the general question is, he says we work with conservation groups to help develop policies. He's asking what outreach we have done to ranchers and farmers in the West to also direct our policy decisions.
Ranchers and farmers are key to the future of conservation, and so many of the projects that we have, which we call working lands or rural landscapes, are involved with ranchers who really depend on the land for their way of life. And I have many examples: the Dakota grasslands, the crown of the continent in Montana, the headwaters of the Everglades, but I'll refer just to one to give you the example: the Flint Hills Conservation Area in Kansas. It's 1.1 million acres. It's the last of the remaining tallgrass prairies in North America. It was the ranchers who came to us and worked with our Fish and Wildlife Service and with the organizations in Kansas to say, we want these 1.1 million acres preserved as working ranches so that we can pass them on to our children and to our grandchildren. And so the National Conservation Area, which we have created there, is one that I'm very proud of. And it's an example of things that are happening all over the country.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And we have time for one more question, and I will just say this video will be available both on livestream.com/interior afterwards, and we will also have it up on DOI.gov next week. So if you joined us a little bit late, you'll be able to catch the entire chat. So the final question is from Ruth in Kentucky. And she says, I'm a Vermont law school student originally from Kentucky. I want cleaner, easier to breathe air, but I'm also concerned about the damage to America's unique landscapes through the infrastructure needed to set up and manage wind and solar energy. How is the current administration assessing and balancing greener energy against infrastructure building risks?
Renewable energy is an important priority for President Obama, for me here in the department. And so as we have moved forward with licensing the most robust renewable energy industry in the history of the United States, what we have also said is that we have to be smart from the start. We have to site these facilities in the right places. It's inappropriate, for example, to site wind farms or solar projects in places which are sensitive and have ecological values that need to be protected. And so we're moving forward with what essentially is a national program to take a look at the best places for the siting of solar facilities as well as wind projects. And we work on that every day. In fact, I probably spent 3 hours of my time yesterday just working on the set of guidelines relating to wind farms and places for siting and the kind of science that you need to make those decisions on siting. So I think we can do both. I think we can move forward and stand up the imperative of renewable energy because it's something that we need for national security as well as our environmental security. At the same time, we can do it in a way that protects the conservation values which we all hold so dear.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I want to thank you for taking the time. I also want to thank everybody who's joined us today. Again, this video will be available next week on DOI.gov. And if you'd like to make sure that you're getting a word on when our next chats will be, make sure you sign up for our email list, which is right on the homepage. There's a box right in the upper right-hand corner at DOI.gov. And if you have questions that you'd like answered, or if you want to find out more ways that you can get involved with our work, please feel free to send us an email at info@ios.doi.gov. And so that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much for participating, and have a great afternoon.